You're listening to the Break Even Brothers podcast, a show by two brothers shooting the breeze about business, finance, technology, and everything in between. All views and opinions expressed are solely our own and not affiliated with any third party. Hope you enjoy the episode. If you do, leave us a review and drop a like. See you there. Awesome. All right. Well, welcome back to episode 14 of the Break Even Brothers podcast. Brad, how's it going?
Fantastic. 2025, year of routine, year of getting stuff done, and of course the year of AI. So yeah, doing pretty well. A pretty chill weekend. Got a lot of stuff done that has been on my to-do list forever. So that was nice. How about you?
Nice. Yeah, it was good. Yeah, 2025 has been a good year so far. 12 days into it. But yeah, no, I'm on like a 17-day Duolingo streak.
I'm on 10 days.
What are you learning? High Valerian?
Chinese. Yeah.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Hard.
Yeah, I heard that's like one of the hardest languages to learn. So best of luck to you. But then beyond that, been making a lot of good food. I had a nice ribeye this evening, which was nice. Had a little ribeye and watched the football game. So yeah, it's been good. Got some, I reported, I think a couple podcast episodes ago that I had planted a vegetable garden or vegetable bed and a flower bed, and got some sprouts coming on the vegetable garden, which is nice because at first I hadn't seen anything for a long time and I was getting kind of worried. I was like, how could I mess this up? Just water and sunlight, right? Like how hard could it be? So starting to see some sprouts on, I think, the lettuce and the broccoli plants. So that's kind of cool. And then a couple of the flowers are doing really well and a couple other ones are not doing so hot. And I don't really know why, but it's all part of the journey, right? So
nice. You got any technology in the mix?
No, nothing yet. Yeah, no, I'm going, like, I just threw the seeds in there. Like, I read the back of the packet and I got like a rough idea of like when planting season was. So I made sure that I wasn't planting like warm weather crops in winter. But beyond that, I just kind of threw them in there. Because it said like you can like dig out like 6-inch holes and then cover it with 3/4 of soil or whatever. I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Like,
these things just grow in nature, right? Like, come on. So I put them in there and I was like, let's just see what happens. And so we're starting to see some progress. So yeah, it's been
nice. That's cool.
It's been good. Yeah. We'll see how it turns
reminds
out.
me. I think there's some new technology. Like CES was last week, or it's last week plus this week. But on my YouTube feed, it's kind of been littered with random CES stuff. And I think one of the inventions that I had seen this year was a pretty cool plant sensor that could be stuck into the soil and could measure all these like plant health metrics. I'm not a plant guy, so I wouldn't really know, but it sounded pretty cool where it could tell you like if it needed water, the sunlight, all that kind of stuff. So I think for me, whenever I get my future house, trying to smart home everything, and if plants become a thing, which I think is something that comes with time, having more plants around the house, it'd be cool to stick little mini sensors in there, get them to be, watered and healthy automatically, just because, I don't know, I see people buy plants and they die. It's like, it'd be nice to just have someone that tells you what to do.
They're surprisingly, I have some plants that are off screen here, but there's some indoor plants kind of right to the right of my desk. And I had like 6 at one point, like all in different pots on like a little like tiered tower
real
kind
ones?
of thing. Yeah, real ones. Yeah. And like 3 of the 6 didn't make it, even though I watered them and gave them good sunlight. But then the other 3 are like just complete like durable, because like sometimes I forget to water them for like a week and they're still just growing and like they're super durable. So yeah, I don't know like the why some survive and some don't. They're all like roughly the same. There's a couple of different like species. I don't know if that's the right word, but a couple of different like types I have. But yeah. Like a hanging vine, a snake plant, and then I don't know what the other one is, but
that's cool.
Yeah,
I don't think they really count unless they're in your background. Like you got to have the pristine video background of gorgeous lighting, HD, DSLR camera. Then you got the plant on the left, and you got the bookshelf on the back. So yeah, you might need to move those to the back so that the viewers can see them.
I like them where they are right here because one, they get a lot of like the most sunlight from the window. But I know what you
Mm.
mean. I know a good background when I see one. But then the other thing that's kind of nice too, which I think helps them. I don't know if this is like scientific at all, but I think it helps them. Is my PC is like right next to them, and I think they get some like warm air from the like exhaust of the PC for like running like a heavy program or like a game or something. So I think they like the warm air. I think that's what separates out the ones that died off. I don't think they like the warm air versus the ones
Mm.
that are still there. Yeah. So that's my theory. I don't know because if you go over behind your PC when you're running something like really heavy, it gets warm back there. And I think the plants that are thriving, I think they like that. So
That's a little hack right there. Nice.
yeah, yeah. I don't know if there's any science to that, but maybe the invention from CES could tell me, hey, they like this or
Yeah.
not. Or maybe they're
There,
just
there's a really cool one that I saw that kind of blew my mind because there's some stuff that's actually useful. There's some stuff that is complete bogus and just prototypey. One that I thought was really interesting was a spoon that you could put like soup in it, and I think once you brought it to your tongue or to your mouth, it would like activate and make that soup or whatever's in the spoon taste more salty, even though there wasn't as much salt in it. And so it had this little like sensor inside the spoon and would do something to it. I don't know what it did. And there's different levels you could activate it on, like low, medium, or high, to make the food or soup taste more salty. I thought that's
hmm.
so genius because sometimes I have a sweet tooth craving and I reach for sugar because I just love it. But it'd be nice if I could trick my brain in a way to be like, this is sweet, but it doesn't hurt. And for the saltiness, it's not as bad for you to have high salt. I mean, I think everything in moderation, but I don't know. It was cool. I was like, that's like a really unique invention that once you hear about it, like, oh, that's cool. I wonder if that would take off at like restaurants, or maybe not to like save money and do less salt, but just for like enhanced flavor profile. Like you come here, you have our soup and our spoon, and that spoon actually makes a difference, which I thought,
Hmm.
well, that's actually genius.
It's kind of creepy in a way because I feel like, I mean, it's cool. Don't get me wrong, the technology's cool, but like, can it trick you into thinking that like it's a bowl of French onion soup, or is it like how much can it mess up with the
I
taste?
don't
Because
know. Yeah.
yeah, I feel like you could have those Vision Pros on and then like be like looking like, oh, I'm eating a piece of steak and it's really just like some tofu or something.
Yeah,
But you're
that'd be
like whatever.
crazy.
Yeah. It reminds me of one of the cooler this was like it's just completely jogged my memory of it, but there was a really cool invention. I don't know where I saw it to be honest, but maybe it was just like one of those like daily dose of internet happy things. I don't know. But it was like an invention where for people that have problems like feeding themselves, like either like a neuromuscular like disability,
Mm,
like the spoon shaking a lot, or
I
like
know where you're going with
Parkinson's.
this.
Yeah, where the spoon like it counterbalances
Yeah,
the shakiness of the hand. It's crazy to watch
it's
because it's like
insane.
you see the hand shaking, but the spoon just stays level, and it's obviously
Hmm.
super cool to be able to assist people that need that help. So I can't imagine the feeling of like, or at least I would hope it's this way, the complete satisfaction of like building something like that and like helping people.
Yeah, that
It's got to
that's
be
more
one of the
useful. This
best.
one maybe is on the scale of cool. Do we need it? Probably not, but maybe it opens the
Yeah,
door to other things. So I thought that was really cool. I
maybe.
need to catch up on CES stuff.
Yeah, maybe someone like wants salty food, but they can't have salt for some medical reason. There you go.
Yeah,
It's perfect for them. Yeah,
they must have had enough of a reason to make it. I would hope. So
yeah,
hopefully that matches something.
yeah, for sure. What else you got going on?
Let's see. Last week went to the Laravel SF meetup. That was cool. So I
Oh,
think
cool.
Taylor Otwell tweeted, the creator of Laravel tweeted, I don't know, maybe like a month or two ago, saying there was going to be a Laravel SF meetup. And for all the times that I've met with Laravel community folks or at Laravel events, it's mostly been like the Laracons, which are, multi-hundred people meetups where there's conference speakers, there's this, there's that, a full show. And so I think Taylor only tweeted about it, and when I saw it, since I'm up in the SF Bay Area, I thought, okay, I'll sign up and go to it. And I think over the weeks there was little to no communication about it outside of like these initial tweets. And then the day rolled around last week, and I was thinking, oh, I got the official email of like my invite. I don't really know who's going because the Laravel community at large is not really based in the Bay Area. Like a lot of people that I interact with online on X, they're not really in the Bay Area. It's much more distributed within the US and then even outside the US as a large community. And so when the date came around, I was like, should I even go? Like, is are people gonna be here? Is it gonna be large? Is it gonna be small? Like, what's it gonna be? So I tweeted, I was like, hey, is anybody going to this? And like a few people responded, at least a few of the Laravel people who I had talked to briefly, like a lot of new Laravel employees were going to be there. And to me, Laravel kind of existed this 10-person company for a long time, and then now is in this large growth phase with VC money. And so I just kind of wanted to meet these people. And it was actually hosted at their VC funding, like that company's headquarters up in SF. So it's pretty cool. I mean, I think it was much smaller than anticipated. So, I got there. I worked up in SF that day and then like Ubered over to the building after work to go to the event. And based on how much stuff I'd seen online, I thought, oh, this is going to be pretty small. I think it ended up being smaller than they had hoped for, which to me, as an attendee, that's not a bad thing. I can talk to people around there without the pressure of being at a conference where you're like the 50th person in the line that has to say something unique.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty cool getting time with like Taylor and the other Laravel employees, like lots of folks outside of engineering, I would say, like marketing, operations, you name it, that were just there to have that VC meeting and then also have the meetup. So it's pretty cool. We had like drinks, and then Taylor presented on Laravel Cloud, their newest product that's coming out. I think this quarter is GA. And then after that, we had like dinner, and probably in total there was maybe like 10 attendees with maybe like 12 employees or 15 employees. A pretty small shindig. And
Mm-hmm.
I think to them, maybe in their point of view, they're like, maybe I won't do this again. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. Maybe they'll think that. But to me, I was like, oh, it's super cool to like not have to fight to get FaceTime with any individual I'd want to talk to. Like I could make the rounds and then some. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
what people were doing. But yeah, really, really great FaceTime. Theo.gg, another like creator in the software space. You've probably seen his avatar. He's got like blonde hair. He was there,
Yeah.
so I talked to him for a bit. But yeah, it was pretty cool. I liked it. I think it was smaller than they wanted, but as an attendee, I felt like I got good FaceTime with people I wanted to talk to, both like new people that I hadn't met and then people that I'd already met before in person. So I liked it. Hopefully they have it again. I had already been on the beta for Laravel Cloud, so I didn't have a ton of new things, but Taylor was kind of talking about the future of it and what they're working on now, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, it's nice to have like a more like not intimate, but like smaller session. Every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
Like the big ones are nice. Like because I remember we talked about Laracon on one of the early episodes of the podcast, and it was like a big event. Which has its own pluses for sure. Like just really cool speakers, lots of like good networking opportunities with other attendees that are probably like doing what you're doing a bit more. But that's cool that you got to kind of interface more with people that are like working on Laravel, not like building things with Laravel. So that's
Yeah,
cool.
I was
Well,
just kind of diving into their backgrounds of like,
yeah.
half of these people got hired within the past 12 months. Like, where were you before? What are you interested in? What are you planning on doing the next year? So lots
Hmm.
of different angles of attack from the Laravel company. So I think it's a big year ahead for them.
Yeah, that's cool. Where was dinner at, if you don't mind us asking?
It's at the same place. So they had like, it was up on this rooftop. It was great until it got freaking cold up there. So like
Mm,
it started at 5:30, ended at like 9, and from 5:30 maybe to 6:30 it was like kind of appetizers and drinks, which was great. And then 6:30 to 7:30 was kind of Taylor presenting on Laravel Cloud and answering questions. And then 7:30 to like 9 was dinner and like dessert. And so dinner was out there on the rooftop, which is kind of where the previous appetizers were. Pretty good food. But again, I think when I go to these events, like the food is good, but I don't want to eat in front of people. Not that I don't want people to see me eating. It's more like I'd rather talk more, and
yeah.
I don't want to be like stuffing my face while trying to listen. It just feels kind of weird. And I think same thing
Yeah.
goes for conferences too. But I told my wife when I got back home that night, I was like, yeah, I'm kind of hungry, not because the food wasn't good, but just because I didn't want to like there wasn't any lines. Like I don't want to go to the front, ask for more food, then come back and then eat and then interrupt the conversation, say, hey, let me go grab 2 more tacos, from
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
taco bar. And so yeah, it was good. It was food provided all there. I didn't have to leave or anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean. I'm usually the same way, but I think the last like team dinner I had with my job, we ate somewhere that was like so good, and I was just like, I'm not talking for the next 10 minutes. Like, I'm gonna eat this like 100% like grade A. It was like I think I got like a steak and lobster thing, and it was like, from like a steakhouse, so it was like legit. Yeah, and it was amazing. So I was
That
just
sounds
like,
good.
normally, like, I'm with you, like, I'm gonna have something light, be able to talk, not just have like buffalo wing sauce all over my face and fingers. I got to keep it
Hmm.
clean. But this time I was like, just ignore me for 10 minutes. I'm gonna enjoy this. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's I love being out in the suburbs, but I definitely the food. My wife and I talk about like missing the food and a bit more of like a hustle and bustling area a bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely miss that out here in Phoenix.
It was
In the
also
burbs. Yeah.
Yeah, it was also my first time taking public transit up to SF to work, and then consequently my first time taking public transit from SF down to South Bay. And so it's a little bit of a painful train ride 'cause it's like almost 50 minutes. And then
Mm,
at night, like the event ends at 9, I need to be back home. It only runs once an hour, so I think it was like 9:50. And so the event was done. I like went to the train station, had to wait like 20 minutes, then took a 50-minute ride. And so that sounds like, oh, it would have been nice to have a car to drive back right then. But in the morning, like getting there and finding parking at the office is kind of painful and expensive. So that part's nice to skip. But yeah, when you want to
yeah.
get home, like waiting for the train at night kind of sucks.
Yeah.
And it's cold too.
How was the journey? Was there any San Francisco locals harassing you?
No, no. What I did notice is that on the Caltrain, sometimes they don't check tickets, so it's kind of like a proof of purchase system. But since
Hmm.
the Caltrain ends in SF or starts, depending on when you get on, I had thought like, oh, let's see what they do here. And before they let anybody in, because there's a bunch of people waiting for the 9:50, they were checking tickets before you could even like enter the boarding area. And so I
Yeah.
thought, oh, this is probably smart. I mean, it makes a ton of sense because this is like the easiest time to catch people.
Yeah.
So yeah, they checked that. But yeah, no crazy people. There was a huge line. I was like in the middle and I thought, oh, I'm gonna have someone sitting next to me for this 50-minute ride. Oh, that's gonna
Hmm.
suck. But it turns out there's a ton of room and I didn't have anybody next to me. So I was just kind of like watching YouTube for an hour. But
Yeah. That's
yeah,
cool.
it was fine. Just a little slow, I think.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever taken a train to like for a commute. Like I've always driven and walked at one point in my career where I lived really close to an office, which was super nice. I love that.
Yeah.
But I remember I worked somewhere that had an office in Irvine, California, which is where I was, but they had their headquarters in downtown LA. And downtown LA office and the Irvine office were both close to like the train. I don't know exactly which train it was, but so people would like take the train from, Orange County into LA and, walk to the office and then come back or whatever. It seemed really cool. But I remember people were saying that like I don't think it's like Southern California doesn't have like the public transportation infrastructure that, you know, certainly not New York and
Hmm.
the Bay Area with BART and all that. But so I think they're like the last train back from like LA to Orange County was at like 5 or like 5:30, which like it's kind of early, like if you're
Hmm.
like working, like it wasn't super convenient. So people were like having to like head out of the office at like 4:15 or 4:30 to go catch that 5 o'clock train. And we're being like, oh, that's super inconvenient. Otherwise, like, it seems like it'd make a lot more sense. But it's still cool to be able to kind of, work or just do other things while you're just effectively wasting time traveling,
Hmm.
I'm definitely ready for when they do the full self-driving cars and, everyone can relax and like check out and, let us just let the cars take us there. I'm ready for
That'd be
that. But
wild working in like your Tesla autopilot, just like full
yeah,
laptop out, no cares in the world. Damn.
it doesn't feel like it's that far away. I got my kids are, 7 and 5 and like, I tell them, I'm like, I think in 10 years, I don't think you'll be driving. Honestly, I think you'll be taken around town, with the automated car system or
Waymo.
whatever. Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of those out here in Phoenix. I've never taken one. I want to, but I know people that take them and they say they're amazing and like you don't have
Hmm.
to, deal with Uber drivers. So it's usually a plus in my opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah, how it is. That's cool. That sounds like a nice little journey. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, that's cool. I just speaking about code and Laravel and all that fun stuff. I hadn't like coded anything anything, I think, in a while. I think the last time I was thinking about this before we were chatting, I think the last thing I was like trying to do was like that Hello Kitty adventure guide,
Hmm.
where like my kids could ask Alexa like a Hello Kitty question and Alexa could answer. So they kind of grew out of that game. So I'm glad I didn't spend any more time on it. But I realized that was like the last thing that I had like kind of done, which had kind of been a while. And so sometime last week, kind of just later in the evening, I was like, I just want to make something that like uses the OpenAI's like voice chat feature,
Hmm.
because I really enjoy that. Like I think last time, or maybe 2 episodes ago, I was talking about how I've been like talking in Spanish with it, which has been like a nice kind of like Spanish buddy, I guess. And so I was like, I'm enjoying this. Let me see if I can like get it to like schedule calls where it's going to call me at a certain time and like basically be like a accountability partner, if you will, of like, hey, I'm going to call you at four
That's a
o'clock, and
cool
like
idea.
we're gonna talk about Spanish, or we're gonna talk about business or something like that. So long story short, I kind of busted out Cursor first. But I have one drawback about Cursor, which we can talk about, but I couldn't get into it on Cursor, so I just went back to VS Code, which is what I'm used to. But then it was my first time like really, I think, really trying to write code like with full AI now. Like we're like before, like with like the Amazon Alexa SDK and Hello Kitty thing, I was still mostly kind of doing it myself, but then like just Stack Overflow or like Googling things.
Hmm.
And so it was pretty cool. I mean, I still wanted to like make sure I understood it. So I tried to get really specific with my prompts and like kind of outline it. Um, and I wrote a bunch of stuff down on paper first, and I kind of like asked it these questions. So what ended up kind of being the result is it made a Flask app, where it has like user management. So like people, you sign up, you have a profile, you put your phone number in, and then the Flask app works with the Twilio API, where I went over, I just bought a cheap phone number, um, and set up that phone number like in my project. So where when I, in my test environment, of course, when I hit the button, it calls me, I pick up, it's right now it's a free version. So it says, this is a free Twilio thing, press 1 to continue or whatever.
Hmm.
So I hit 1 and I say something, and right now it'll give me a response. But then after that, it cuts out. Like it gives me one response. So I'm still working on it, but
Hmm.
it's pretty amazing how to get that far. For me, again, as a I wouldn't consider myself a very technical person. So for me to get that far with something like that, I worked on it for a total of maybe 4 hours.
That's pretty good.
Like in 2 hour, like basically worked on it for 2 days, like in 2 hour little increments. And I think I'm pretty close, and I'd give it the error messages when it was bombing out, and so I'm kind of trying to work through that. But yeah, pretty amazing, and there was parts where it didn't get something right, and I had to kind of go back and say, hey, this isn't working, and it would go back and fix it. So it's
Hmm.
definitely not perfect, which I don't think anyone's advertising that it is, but nonetheless, still pretty cool to be able to get something up and running and just kind of mess around. Because I remember kind of prior to like the widespread use of AI, I was writing things in Django, and it was Stack Overflow was like the resource, and then I had like a couple books, like actual like books, that were on my Kindle device, where I'd like go look up. It was like production Django, so I'd go look up like the section on forms,
Hmm.
and mix-ins and stuff like that. So it's definitely way faster, doing it this way.
I'm
But
surprised you fought with Cursor. Their new update was
well, I
insane.
wanted to use it. Yeah, I wanted to use it for that. And this is probably a me issue, but my biggest thing with it is like I don't feel like I have like the good like project view. My panes are really like really small and
Mm.
like hidden, and I don't know if that's like again, I tried to like go in and edit the settings, but I couldn't get it to like look just a visually like where it shows all the files on the side, and it has like my terminal at the bottom, and like has like all my plugin windows, like where I have like the linters, and like I'm blanking on my other extensions. Like I guess I could pull it up, but like like a Docker extension and stuff like that. So like it just doesn't feel like home for me yet,
Mm.
And it's like for someone who like I'm used to my like environment. I just found I could do stuff in it, but like it just didn't feel. I felt like I was still kind of learning Cursor, and I didn't want to learn Cursor. I wanted to just code. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
Um,
that's how I felt when I first started using it. So I'm a heavy user of PHP Storm, doing the Laravel in PHP, and it's pretty much PHP Storm or Visual Studio Code. The kind of leading editor, and Cursor is a fork of VS Code, so it's very similar. But when I was jumping between PHP Storm, my main IDE and editor, and Cursor, I was fighting because I just really liked how PHP Storm did things, and the value that Cursor brought wasn't high enough for me to say this pain is worth it. But their latest update has really changed my mind, and I've almost shifted to use Cursor more because it gives way more value, and the pain that I get not having the same exact feature set, shortcuts, UI, whatever from PHP Storm, it's negligible at the current state. And I think with their specific AI models getting better and their user experience getting better, like on their own app, I don't know. Maybe I'll do a full switch to PHP Storm, or from PHP Storm to Cursor, because I paid for their Cursor Pro, I think it is, and it's like everything in the AI space is $20. Like any service is pretty much $20, and that's another $20, and I use it all the time. And so, yeah, I think I felt the same pain you had, and then I had the kind of epiphany that I can do way more here, even if I kind of eat the crap that Cursor sometimes gives me that I don't love. I get so much faster code output, although I have to do a lot of directing. So it really depends on your comfortability and like how much you know you need to write versus how much you don't know. Like if I go into an area where I don't know, I take Cursor's code that's generated pretty easily without questioning it. For Laravel, I know what I have to do. I just don't want to write it because it's a lot of plumbing in different files. So I describe it. I hit go on Cursor. It does like 80% of the job. But sometimes it'll miss pretty large things. And I'll say, oh, this makes no sense. Like, please adjust these 3 things. And then it understands it and fixes it. But yeah, I think I've come to view Cursor as like a faster me, in the sense that I would get to a similar looking code over time, but Cursor just does it faster than I would by hand. So that's where I've seen the value. Although the UI isn't perfect by any means.
It's interesting because you'd think that UI would be like one of the easier things to make look nice. I don't know. Again,
Mm-hmm.
like just copy VS Code or copy I'm not used to PHP Storm or whatever, but like PyCharm, like they all kind of
Mm-hmm.
have a certain look. Like just make it like that. I don't know. But one thing you were saying that was kind of interesting to me, and maybe this is my ignorance to the tool, but doesn't Cursor, you said something about how their model is getting better. That's just you just connect to like Claude, or you just connect to like open O1 mini, right? Like it's not their own, or is it their own?
I think they have both now. I think they have their own
Okay.
like Cursor small edits, Cursor large edits, or some like AI model. And I honestly believe it just wraps some model under the hood, but does a little bit more with it.
Hmm.
I'm using Claude Sonnet right now, which is pretty much top tier coder in any coding benchmark, both by vibes, which is, kind of engineers using it, and by benchmarks of all these like software engineer benchmarks, blah, 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 blah. I'm mostly using that, but yeah, I think they have their own models, which, as far as I know, could go pretty far in the AI landscape. So yeah, it's kind of yet to be seen. But one thing I want to talk about real quick is, I know how you'd mentioned the AI calling you,
Hmm.
which I thought was a great idea, because I think a few months ago on Twitter, I saw this accountability coach where you would pay them maybe $200 a month, and they would like text you once a day or text you every few days, like, how's your diet going? How's your goals going? And it'd be an honest place for you to kind of describe what you're doing, or like you would send daily like food pictures of what you're eating, and they can kind of shame you or guilt you into saying like, oh, you shouldn't be eating that. That's like the accountability. But I
Yeah.
always thought it'd be a lot of work for them to text you on an interval, or for you to text them proactively, like, here's my breakfast, I'm gonna go send a photo. But I
Yeah.
like your approach, which is, every day if I expect to call at 5:30, that like, assuming I work for myself again, it'd be like, hey, what did you do today? Like, any challenges? What would you want to get done tomorrow? And so almost like a recap of the day. And
Yeah.
it's low effort, because you'd imagine the AI could call you. It could take whatever you said and transcribe it, and then it could store it in some like to-do list that evolves over time. And then it's much easier to speak than it is to type. And you can have AI commands like clean up what you say. If you're saying, oh, I did this, and then that, like a bunch of filler words, you can just have AI say, clean it up, summarize it, extract the big ideas, modify my to-do list, do all that. And I imagine you can go pretty far with that, where you have different templated calls. Maybe one is every day at 5:30 is work. Maybe once a week it's what have you caught up with your friends or family? Like, who have you talked to? Who do you want to talk to? And then maybe put stuff on your calendar or whatever. Almost like you need to get stuff done, but you're lazy. And the phone calls almost like jog your memory to do things. And the output of the phone call of your voice beckons action in some large way with your calendar, email, whatever. Sounds pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Geez, give away the whole plan. Damn, Brad. Okay. I'm just kidding. Yeah. So like it is. So right now it's just using, this is where it
Is it
went ahead
WebRTC?
and no,
Okay.
it's using OpenAI and Twilio. There's something more I can upgrade to. It's like using Twilio's Say, which I'm not like a pro in Twilio's like library at all, but they have a Python library that lets you connect with your credentials and then make the calls. You can do text obviously, but in this case I'm using the phone call like set of methods, or which I think they call Say. But I know that there's an option to use, and I didn't know this, but Chat GPT told me that you can make it better with Google's like text to speech. It was called something specifically, but it was by Google, and I think it was just like one step better than like the Twilio like
Oh,
original version.
I think you're probably mentioning like sometimes how it pronounces things, maybe.
It was like you can make the transcription better by using the
Uh,
Google thing, and it was
huh.
like 200 more lines of code, and I was like, I'm not worried about that right now, but so that's something I definitely want to look into. But yeah, basically the idea, and a lot of times I think it's nice for me because whenever I walk my dog, or like sometimes I just go on a walk, just periodically throughout the day to kind of just get the body moving, and that's kind of a good step away from like work and just kind of recollect yourself. And a lot of times I'll like talk on the phone like during those calls, like I'll call our parents, or I'll call a buddy. And so I was like, why don't I just like call, like when I was doing the Spanish thing, I was like, let me just call or use the voice chat, and I'm like talking to chat gpt in Spanish. So when I kind of had the idea, it was like I'm always doing this anyways. I would if I like scheduled it to be like specifically like an accountability partner for like a certain goal in 2025, and yeah, basically transcribes what you're writing down, saves it to a database, and then it can read back the following week or the following day whenever you schedule the next one, like, oh, how did that go? It's interesting because at some point you will this is just maybe the cynic in me, but like at some point you will maybe question the thing's authority, because it's not a human, right? Like it's not some, like, it'd be different if you were getting like coached from like a really accomplished coder, like just say one of the Laravel founders, or because like this person's been there, they've done that, like they've blah blah blah,
Mhm.
like just as an example. And for me, having a different goal, it's like at some point it's like, well, you don't know what to do, you're just reading like based on what you think you're supposed to do, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like I wonder at some point would someone kind of get fed up with like the responses they get from the chat box. It's like you're not actually, what I mean? Like, what I'm saying? Like, you don't have any authority. You're just like a copy of what people think. You know what I mean? I don't
Yeah,
know. That's just like where my mind goes. But it's gonna be an interesting experiment. I definitely want to kind of finish it out and just deploy it. Even just on some cheap no name domain that I just use. But
that's
yeah,
cool.
yeah, something I'm interested about. The one thing, real quick, because I know I've spent a lot of time on this, but the one thing I want to mention about using chat or using AI to code was, I noticed that chat GPT, and I have Claude, I just didn't use it, but it gave me some really obvious errors or issues that I had to like go back and fix. Like there was like two libraries that had been since deprecated. And it's like, how did you give me that? Like you had to go
Mhm.
back and change it. And then it was like, it had the wrong like allowed methods on like, put and like post requests, it just had the wrong ones completely. And, after you kind of go back to it, it goes, oh yeah, it needs to be
Yeah,
post or whatever. So that was kind of underwhelming, and I was using the best I think it's O1 mini, or whatever the highest advanced reasoning one is. I was using that, and for whatever it's worth, it got me most of the way there. But I guess our expectations now are so high that it was
it
like,
is
oh,
high. Yeah,
it's, yeah, it was interesting.
yeah.
But
I mean,
yeah.
speaking of the voice, there was this app that I saw the other day called Yogurt. It popped up on my X feed, and Honestly, being in the voice domain is very interesting in lots of different ways. One of the ones that I thought of coming out of my interviews last year, specifically the software engineering interviews, there's lots of real time conversations, like we're having right now. Someone could ask you a coding question, loop through the numbers from 1 to 100. And if it's divisible by 3, print out fizz. If it's divisible by 5, print out buzz. If it's divisible by 3 and 5, print out fizz buzz, which is like legitimately a question that gets asked from time to time. I've never got it, but that is a real thing. And I'd always thought to myself, if I could write a Mac OS app that could run on my Mac, listen to the conversation audio, like to intercept the audio, understand my voice as the person who created the app or someone who's being interviewed, and then the interviewee or the person who's like interviewing me as like an unfamiliar voice, if it could extract out what they're asking me and then automatically send it to Claude and say, I'm a software engineer. I'm in a coding interview. This is the question I got asked. Write me like a solution in Swift or in PHP or whatever. And then it just like prints out on your screen. And funnily enough, there actually is this trending tool that does this. I saw it on TikTok. It was essentially exactly what I described. So it intercepts your audio, figures out who's talking, and just has this giant pop-up on your screen that shows you what you need to write for the code. And I thought, like, if I had the idea, probably hundreds of other people had the idea. And I think we're now at the age of AI apps where it's easy to write a Mac OS app given cursor. Like you might not know how to write a Mac native application, but given cursor, you can get pretty damn far with it. And two, the speech to text. So if I say a sentence, it can be transcribed so fast now that it can be in real time, where like a year ago or even like 2 years ago, if you wanted something like this to happen, it'd be hard to write and the speed wouldn't match. And so this is like an interview cheating tool. I wouldn't recommend it and don't endorse it because you'll struggle when you get there on the job. But the thought in my head was for people who are really struggling, or if someone wanted to be a bad actor, that could be a possibility. And then, so kind of tying it back to my initial one is Yogurt was a tool I had seen, which is a similar premise. So it listens to your audio on Mac, but it's mostly useful for transcribing meetings. So if you're in back-to-back meetings, say it's like Google Meet, Zoom, whatever, doesn't matter what your platform is, it'll record all the participants given your audio input and output, and then summarize, transcribe, do all that, and store it online in the cloud. And I thought, this is like the safe version, what should be done. And like this other TikTok viral kind of cheating software engineering one is kind of the bad actor side. And I definitely want to use it soon because it sounds really helpful. Just because I feel like there's so much that happens in meetings, and like this would probably have to be adopted at a company level. I don't think I could install something like this like at work to do it, but like transcribing meetings, because so much stuff happens, and like action items, automatic tags, and like Google Docs, calendar, Slack, whatever. Like, I don't know why we don't have it. Maybe you guys have this. We don't have it. But just seeing like someone put together a Mac OS app that does the heavy lifting here is like exactly what I would want, because at the end of the day, we have so much powerful tools. It probably costs 5 cents to transcribe like a 30-minute meeting, and it would probably be done in 30 seconds. And like, I don't know, it's just such a no-brainer in my head that it's like, I really want to tinker with more of these voice tools because voice is like so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting point, and I'll just say it as a general comment, not specific to any, certain company or any like certain companies, but like, you know, because I think like Zoom has like a transcription feature, like they have, you can record and you can turn on AI features or whatever. But like a lot of times when you're at like a certain size, like enterprise, you get into like annual contracts and like negotiated contracts, where like you're locked in with that vendor for a year, or like so many people are using it that it's really hard to switch. Because at one point, um there was a software called Blue Jeans, I think is what it was
Oh
called.
yeah, yeah, I forgot about
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
they
so and
use that at
then
Meta a little bit.
people switch to Zoom, and maybe vice versa or whatever. But like the switching costs and like time, and like if you have lots of employees, it's just like a lot. And that's where I think a smaller, we talked I think last time about the like one person $1 billion exit or
Hmm.
whatever. And I think just along those lines, maybe just a similar kind of vein, is like smaller companies can do more and be more nimble for sure. And like there might be like a unique opportunity in the next year or two, maybe even three, before those enterprises catch up, where like you can use a new cutting edge tool and be like X more productive. I mean, just what you said right there of like, getting a transcribed meeting notes and like having automatic action items that like go put it on their calendar and like then calls them if they're not delivering and going, hey, where's this at? Like you could kind of like go further and further into it, and maybe that would work really well. Who knows? And that if that gets people to do 10x more, or they're able to accomplish 10x more than what it takes 10 people to do that, 10 people's salaries, and
Yeah.
you could see it making a big difference for sure.
Yeah, it's like the year of the AI agents. Like I think the folks at Google AI have really been pushing, I think 2025 is the year of agents where, someone or some quote unquote one, which is an AI agent, could listen to all this audio, transcribe it, do all these specific actions. And for me, as a person who builds with AI, not necessarily building any models, but more application side, building these productivity pipelines and workflows sounds really cool, but it's only useful at companies of scale. For me, if I work for myself tomorrow full time again, I don't have a ton of meetings. Like I can manage my own calendar. I think it'd be nice to have an AI agent to be able to dispatch tasks to. But where I really see this value is, large enterprise, 10,000 people, 20,000 people. It's summarizing all these meetings, looking at other documents internally because no one has time to check on internal document databases and see who's already working on this effort or who already did it and it failed 3 quarters ago and no one checked. And to me, that's like the amount of effort the AI can do to crawl through all these documents in real time with high intelligence. Like whoever makes that software, I mean, I think it probably should be Google, given they have the whole platform of Drive, Docs, Sheets, Calendar, unifying all that into a very productive enterprise workplace suite where things are done automatically and I don't need to think and it's like smarter than me. I would pay, I'm sure companies would pay massive for that amount. And then if you could extract that and bring it to like the Microsoft side of, I don't know, Microsoft 365, whatever their chat app is called, Teams, all that kind of stuff, like big boom there. And I imagine it'll happen by the end of this year where like overnight we'll just become like twice as productive, given we don't have to do half of these tasks and we're reminded and like reprioritizing things consistently given this massive amount of information that AI will process. So yeah, looking forward to that. I would like to do less, but yet do more, which is the key.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty crazy where it'll head. I think about those robots from iRobot. Just I don't know. Whenever I think about like AI, I just think about those movies like Minority Report and iRobot, and then I think of Good Will Hunting, which I don't know. Have you seen Good Will Hunting?
I think I've seen like half of it.
Oh, shame on you! It's so good. Then you won't get the reference, but there's a part where the premise is like Matt Damon knows he's super smart, he's just super intelligent, but he was like a janitor, but like he just is a savant basically. And then the professor was Robin Williams. At one point, I think it's been a while since I've seen the movie, but at one point he gets kind of sick of his shit, like just kind of always being a know-it-all and like just can't remember what exactly they're fighting about, but the professor, Robin Williams goes like, you may know like when the like Sistine Chapel was built, you may know who built it, but like he's like, you'll never know like what the smell of it is like when you step into the building, and it was like,
yeah,
he's like, you'll never know like the humidity of like stepping into the room after I'm just making up at this point, but like that was like what he was kind of saying, like because you haven't been there. And I was like, I think about that with the robots. I'm like, you might know who built it, you might know how to code, but like you'll never smell what we smell. It's just kind of just kind of keep your let them know what's going on.
You never been in the Stone Age where our meetings weren't transcribed and recorded and auto action items like that is the Stone Age now.
I've never even been in the Stone Age. We've been in the Stone Age as humans, you know what I mean? Like we had to come from behind and catch up, like you guys had it easy. Yeah, you gotta remind them of that every now and then.
I'm excited to get a personal robot, whatever that may be. We should put that on the bingo card for personal at-home robot for 2025. Damn.
I might pass on that. Can you imagine just like waking up and he's just like standing there, like
it's like
coffee. I don't know why I'm giving him a he, but it's just standing there. Yeah, I'll pass.
Yeah,
no thanks.
We'll see about that.
We should have added that to the 2025 bingo card.
Yeah, that's what
Personal
I'm saying.
robots. Yeah. One thing that we wanted to kind of chat about quickly was, and I think you actually added it to our list, but I had seen it too, just being in the Python world, was I don't want to say the release, but just like the widespread adoption of UV instead of pip. Do you
Mhm.
want to take the lead on what's going on with that one, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I'm happy to take it. It's been on my list for a while. So the general software community is transitioning to Rust everything, and Rust is the hottest language that's very fast. So you can think of C, which is kind of the bare bones memory tough language to work with. So you get high speed, but then Rust brings the safety and security of managing that memory in a safe compiled way. And so maybe a little bit hard to follow, but you can think of Rust being like the quote unquote successor to C. And I think we talked about it a few podcasts ago, but it was like kind of sanctioned by the government that we have a bunch of software in like legacy C and it needs to be transitioned to Rust because we get similar speed, if not better in some areas, yet we have much, much greater safety. So less crashes for like critical software. You can't write, flight software in C because you're going to have a disaster with some crash or then hell's going to break loose. So maybe Rust could be an option. I don't think it is, but you get the point. And so Python has pip, the package manager. I'm not sure what it stands for. Python something something package.
Yeah, I
You
don't
got
know.
yeah, something Python package manager, I'm sure. And then UV came out, I don't know when, but it's popped up on my radar. And the first time it popped up was because I follow tons of AI folks on Twitter. And one thing that popped out since these AI coding models got so good was what they call quote unquote one shotting Python scripts. And so if you know how Python works, maybe you want to go scrape a website, you need to pip install Beautiful Soup. Beautiful Soup is like the go to HTML parser for Python. And what UV can do, which is my first introduction into it, was these things called single file scripts. So this guy that I follow on Twitter, he said, "Hey, stop using pip for Python for your AI queries. Here's a prompt that you can use, which tells OpenAI's ChatGPT or Anthropic's Claude Sonnet that says, hey, use UV and make it a single file script. And what that does is you don't need to do any pip install. You don't need to do any Python activate virtual environment. You can do UV, which is kind of the um, Python 3 runner. So you say UV and then the Python script name. And I believe UV will look at this comment that's at the top of the file. If you do a single file script, that comment will dictate the dependencies that are required. So you can just run UV like my script.py. And if AI generated it and put in the right dependencies, it can run without any setup. But before, if you ask, ChatGPT or Claude to generate you a Python script, it might say, install Beautiful Soup, install requests, install, X, Y, and Z. And then you can run this. Now with UV, on top of all the features that it provides, which is like safety, security, speed, which is like a 10x improvement over pip. So if you pip install, now you can like UV install equivalent and it's much faster. But again, the main thing that drew me towards it was single file scripts where I have so many one-off things that I would love to automate like just everywhere in my life where I need software to move data around these systems, but I don't want the headache of setting up a virtual environment. So I think UV is a successor to pip. It's faster, safer, smaller, does all these extra features. And I haven't used it yet, but I am very close to adopting it for some stuff that I'm just kind of hacking on the side. So once I adopt it and install it and try it out, I'll report back. But from the initial findings and documentation so far, looks very promising and it has everything that you'd ever need. So it seems like the natural successor, but it'll take time. Python has a massive community and people are happy with how things are, but
Mhm.
over time as more tutorials use UV, it'll definitely be adopted.
Yeah, it's interesting because I had seen it on Twitter. I think the creator, one of the main contributors, was kind of promoting it as he should, right? So I was looking at it, and it looks pretty interesting. But one of the things, and again, not from a less technical perspective, is if you look at it on GitHub, it's like 98% written in Rust and only like 2% basically written in Python. And pip on the other hand is 99.9% Python. And so I guess the success in the sticking power of UV seems like it largely is like based on if Rust will stick around, which like is a relatively newer language. I mean, definitely, like you said, it's definitely uh, hot a topic, and it seems like there's definitely a need for it. It's some of these languages are so old in a good way, where it's like they're proven to stay. Like Python's here to stay. JavaScript. Well, I don't know. I predicted last time that JavaScript would go away, but like Java, like there's some that have a real staying power. I don't know if Rust has like proven that yet, but like what do I know? But the other thing that's interesting with UV is it kind of, I think I read in the documentation, was like it I think it either defaults or like auto forces like a virtual environment. So when I set up my program, and it was interesting, when I did ChatGPT, it still did pip in just a regular virtual environment. But with UV, I guess it forces like you have to have a virtual environment, which I think is a good thing. It's not like a bad issue or not like a negative thing, but just a difference between pip and there was still like a pip like usage with it. Like you like still some of the commands like in the documentation, it was like it's like UV pip sync or whatever. So I don't know how that interplays, but yeah, it seems like people really like, it seems like there's a want for it for sure. One of the things I remember a couple of years back, I think there was another package manager, I think called Poetry, and people were really hyping that one up. And then it kind of, something happened to it. I can't remember exactly what happened, but it like went away or stopped being supported because of like open source issues with like the contributors. I can't remember exactly what it was, but that was one that I saw. I was like, a lot of the like tutorial books I'd mentioned earlier, like were like pushing Poetry, and then I don't
Hmm.
I don't see that around anymore.
I
I think
haven't
there
heard
was
of
some
that.
issue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the UV really encompasses like multiple tools. So not only can it do like your general package management, but it can do other things like there's pipx, pip tools. I'm just looking at their docs, like virtual env. All that's kind of tucked away into one thing, and then it supports Mac, Linux, Windows. Yeah, faster speed, lower footprint. Like you really can't go wrong with that. And I think you can just look like you mentioned, 98% Rust. That's 10 times better than running Python. And then I also Googled what pip stands for, and it says a recursive acronym for pip installs packages. So kind of on the PHP front, where I think PHP was like a recursive of like personal homepage, but it's like PHP. I don't know. It's kind of this weird joke, but I think pip will probably be on the way out, probably in 2 years is my guess. It takes a while because people don't really want to change. Once like large tutorial makers or influencers in the community start using and adopting and pushing it, and then people get a taste of it, the migration is going to be well underway. So yeah, it'll be exciting for that.
Yeah. I think and it's like a package manager. It's not like it's that core, what I mean? Like it seems like it'd be an easier thing to switch.
Yeah.
It's just, you're just telling the program what dependencies you need. Like, I think it's not going to have a bumpy crossover when they do decide to switch it.
Yeah. And when you talked about when you were chatting with AI and it's bringing in deprecated libraries, one thing that I've been using in ChatGPT more has been this I forgot what they called it, but it's like web search. I don't know if you've seen it in the UI, but if you have the Mac OS ChatGPT native app, maybe you're on Windows, so I think there is a Windows client potentially.
Hmm.
There's a button in the bottom when you type in your message. It kind of looks like a little globe, like an internet icon. If you select that, it'll do search with your icon. So ChatGPT and the AI models are trained up to a certain date. So they ingest all this documents up until, maybe 6 months ago. And so if you ask it, like, what was the most recent holiday, like the Jimmy Carter holiday or whatever that came out recently, it would not have any clue because it's not up to date. But the search does grounding where it kind of does almost like a Google search and will find relevant data and then answer your question. And I've been using that a lot more. It's been super helpful. Like any, question where I can pull real data and AI can then process it, it's been really, really helpful. Then on top of that, I talked about it last podcast, but I haven't done it yet. And so I think I'm very much on the cusp is buying O1 Pro. So O1 Pro came out during their December kind of shipathon, 13 days of Christmas, what they called it. I think it was either at the start or the end, they had launched O1 Pro. And so O1 is their reasoning model. So when you send a message, it takes a lot of time to come back with a response. O1 Pro is kind of the evolution of O1, where they have O1, they have O1 Mini, and then O1 Pro is like the mega researcher one that we talked about in the last pod. And I had thought, do I want to buy this? It's $200. So it's 10x the usual AI tool price. And the vibes on Twitter weren't that great, honestly. The consensus was Claude writes better code. I forget that I sent a message because it takes 10 minutes. And I think overall the ChatGPT application is much more well designed for real time. So I send a message and get a response back very quickly. But when you use O1 Pro, it might take 10 minutes, and maybe you had your phone open and then went to sleep. And I had heard some reports that if your phone went to sleep or you change tabs or kind of something that you get bored, distracted, or whatever can cancel that response output. And has this really negative feedback loop. And that was the first consensus. Now I've been seeing a shift, and even Sam Altman called this out, that I think people learned how to prompt O1 better. And I had saw one tweet recently talking about, I wouldn't call talking with O1 prompting. I forgot the phrase that this user had put it, but it was the perfect way to describe it as like, I think he mentioned I'm briefing O1, not prompting it, where in my mind, prompting is like, write me a for loop using Laravel that iterates through Eloquent or like makes a DB query. Like briefing it is like, this is the goal, this is the context, this is, the expected outcome, here are some warnings, and like here's the relevant context. So I think the shift has come from really how to maximize output with this really smart model. And ever since I saw the kind of vibe shift maybe a week or two ago, I think a lot more people have bought it, a lot more people have followed the general advice of briefing, which is a much longer version of a prompt, and have seen much better results. And due to that, I'm slightly influenced, I think, to give it a try. And, if I spend $200 and it sucks and it's not better than Claude, then not the end of the world. But I've heard these success stories of it, quote unquote, one-shotting pretty complicated logic. And I'd ask folks like, hey, what's the prompt? What are you doing? And I've heard mixed reactions of, oh, I just asked it like convert from, like Python to Rust, and it could do it all. And I was like, damn, because I picked up working on Split My Expenses a little bit, this past weekend, and I'm doing some complicated currency conversion. I really won't go into it because it's too boring and complicated, but I need a really detailed look at the code base. I need some decent math too with the currency conversion, just like logic checks. And I really don't have the time to spend like 8 hours, like a full day to figure it out. And at this point, I'm like, maybe I can buy O1 Pro given the increased hype and attention on it on Twitter. Give it a go, give it a spin, maybe spend like 10 minutes writing a brief of like what my feature is, what my app is, what I want it to do, where the problems are. Fire that off and see if it can one-shot me some code, because man, I have been really struggling with the currency conversion feature for almost like 2 months now, where it's at that 80% mark, and that last 20% is hell. And it's a really important 20%, but it's not something I want to do. So I thought, what better than to offload work to the AI overlords to just like push me to the finish line. So hopefully by next pod, I'll have a result. But yeah, we're seeing a vibe shift in O1 and O1 Pro specifically, and I really want to get to the bottom of it, whether it's a prompt change, they rolled out some update, or it's actually not that useful.
Yeah. I'll be curious. Yeah, you have to, if you do end up doing it, you have to report back some results and like do your own little, your own little testing, if you will. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. Cool. So I think we're almost at time. I had been digging through my bookmarks, and honestly, every time I bookmark something on Twitter, I think, oh, this is like so good, I should go look at this. And then as I scrolled through my bookmarks today, I thought, what the hell am I bookmarking? Because all these are junk. So not to say that one that I chose today is junk, but the one I chose today was this Microsoft startup program. So it's, I think a few companies have this. I think Amazon has this. I think maybe Google has this. Essentially like a startup program that you apply to get almost like funding or small grants or free services. And the one I saw on Twitter was the Microsoft one. It gives you, I'm kind of reading off their stats, 25,000 off your Stripe fees. So if you make money, you pay less to Stripe. 75% off LinkedIn Premium. So again, if you're hiring, that can be a huge value add. And the biggest is $150,000 in Azure credits. So Azure being the kind of compute, the Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud competitor. And that's to get your startup kind of locked into Microsoft. And then once you make good money, you're paying them a large check where they're handing you a lot up front. So if you are an indie hacker out there, if you're looking to get some free money from Microsoft, definitely check it out. I'll link it in the show notes, but I'm pretty sure it's just kind of like submit your LLC, a few bits and pieces of information, and then probably might have to have something on the platform, like something deployed on Azure to get approved. But yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities out there for people looking to pick up free stuff for small startups or, new bets, just so they can get you hooked on their platform. And this one sounds pretty good. I don't even know how I'd spend 150,000 Azure. So it's almost like a challenge to crack that.
Specifically on Azure, like you have to spend it on Azure.
Specifically on Azure, yeah.
Huh. Yeah, that's crazy. I wouldn't.
Too
I would
useful.
have no idea. Cool. Yeah, that's interesting. I have two kind of bookmarks, I guess. The first one is a tweet from Derek Thompson, who's a writer at The Atlantic. I didn't know that. I'm just reading it live. But he has a podcast, and there's a podcast that I want to listen to. But in the tweet, he kind of outlined the biggest points of the podcast. And I guess they go over the 2025 economic forecast with someone who works at JP Morgan. And the four kind of bullet points I thought were really interesting. And I wanted to kind of, drill down into, to use some corporate speak, is first, big tech's dominance and profit is unlike anything in our lifetimes, which is, I think it's one of those things that you kind of know, but it's just interesting to hear presented with, and they have some graphs in the tweet, which I'll link. But then where it gets, I think, more interesting is, second, their unprecedented cash flow is setting the stage for an unprecedented capex build out in AI, which is, kind of all the things that we're talking about this episode. So I thought it was super topical. And the other two are more of like a comparison with, the United States versus other global powers. And basically the corporate outperformance of America versus Europe the last 20 years is unbelievable. And I had seen this like in some just discourse on Twitter, and it was mostly from Europeans lamenting how just the bureaucracy of like the EU just stifles any like motivation to innovate. And that's not to say that like they want to be American at all, but just kind of saying that like the business climate in the EU is so much harder just due to all the regulation and taxes and just lack of risk taking.
GDPR, all the USB-C, everything comes out of there.
Yeah, like there's plenty of things that like I think Europe gets right, but like that one, seems like a lot of Europeans are saying, hey, like it's hard to build here, like we have to build elsewhere. And then the last one is China's economy is slowing. So I feel like I've read that a bunch of times, but yeah, just overall interesting. So I want to listen to the podcast, but interesting kind of hook on the tweet. Definitely caught my attention, and then they include some good graphs, kind of showing the 4 points that we mentioned. So that's my first one, and then my second one is it's not really a link, but it's a reading list article from Jason Stats, who I've mentioned a few times on the podcast. He's a very influential accounting person. I don't know exactly what to call him, but he listed out a bunch of books for accounting firms, accounting people, and a couple of them I have and I've started to read. So the two that I have that I've either read or started to read is Atomic Habits, which I think everyone has at least heard of that book. Then the other one is $100 million Offers, which I think I mentioned on this podcast not that long ago. So I'm like halfway through that one. But then he has a bunch of other ones. The Accountant Marketer, I do have that one as well. I am reading that. So a bunch of good books that I want to check out. My goal is definitely read a bit more this year, specifically like books about like, kind of just running a business and like just trying to kind of understand more than just kind of like what I do day to day, kind of like sales and marketing. And we both have lamented our marketing skills. So just trying to kind of get better in different areas. So I'm going to kind of take a look at that list. And one of the books actually, the 4 Conversations is I'm in like a book club kind of thing. And that's the book that we're going to read. So I haven't read any lick of it yet, but I think that one's going to start reading that at the end of January, I think in the book club thing. So excited about that one too. It's all about sales and stuff. So yeah, it'll be good. Cool. I'm excited for that. So
I took a
See,
look at the post that you linked, and I love how he starts it off on LinkedIn. Can you read? I can. Here are my favorite books.
yeah, he's really nailed his style for sure.
Yeah, he
He's
has a
got
lot of personality for sure.
yeah. He's been a great resource for accounting, I think, as a whole. So yeah, he's just got good stuff posted. But yeah, so
Nice, nice.
I'll link those in the show notes, and yeah, if anyone's interested, they can check those out.
Cool. And then hopefully before the next pod, yeah, I can have an update on O1 Pro because I think even talking about it gets me excited to bite the bullet and try to eke out all the value I can. I think even Sam Altman says they lose money on the $200 a month, where in my head that seems kind of nuts. So we'll see if I think the value is there.
Yeah, I don't know if I believe that quote, to be honest, but
Yeah,
whatever. Yeah, and
it
look, a
doesn't
private
influence
company,
me.
you can say whatever you want, I guess. But
Yeah,
yeah, that's I'll be curious too. I mean, that's a big chunk of change to spend, but I
it
guess you can
is.
just it's month to month, right? You can just cancel if you don't
Yeah,
like it.
yeah. I would
Right?
do 1 month max for sure because if it was super worth it, it'd be an easy continuation. But even then, like I think I need it on and off. Nothing that I'm doing is really that hard. This is more just like a specific problem that I think it could be useful for and is a good use case for. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'll report back.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. Well, I think that's a good wrap
Cool.
on everything, Brad. So yeah, we'll get everything linked and bookmarked and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, all in all, another good one. Cool.
Awesome. Sounds good. We'll see you next time.
Yep. See you next time. Hey, hope you liked that episode of the Break Even Brothers podcast. To find more of our episodes, you can go to breakevenbrothers.com or find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Transistor FM. To connect with Brad, you can go to bradleybernard.com or at bradleybernard on X. And to connect with me, you can go to bennettbernard.com or at the Real Tech CPA on X. You can also find us both on LinkedIn. Thanks. See you next time.